In this video, I create slit-scan images with Adobe After Effects and try to recreate the Stargate sequence from 2001: A Space Odyssey. If you'd like to skip my little history lesson about 2001, skip to this timecode to jump right into After Effects. 2001 is an amazing film, considered the greatest sci-fi film of all time by many people. I don't see any reason to dispute that. It's a spectacular film from top to bottom. Toward the end of the film is the famous Stargate sequence, the sort of psychedelic light show, which is just an incredible piece of work, especially considering that it was made in 1968 by Doug Trumbull and the special effects team. I'm not going to go into great detail about how it was done. There are a couple of wonderful resources of people analyzing that and recounting the history, including Doug Trumbull himself. I'll link a whole bunch of that in the description here. But a couple particularly good videos come from Cinema Tyler and Filmmaker IQ. John Hess with Filmmaker IQ went so far as to recreate a miniature version of the moving track that Doug Trumbull used. It's pretty remarkable. In summary, there is a camera moving down a track in a dark room toward a sheet of glass painted black with a narrow slit running down the middle, and light could show through that slit, and there were colored gels behind the slit with light behind them, so a little scan line of light would move across the frame as the camera moved. The camera would shoot one frame at a time, expose one frame over the duration of the movement, which was about a minute, and that is how you get one half of the frame. It was an incredibly time-intensive process. They had to build this elaborate setup. I've asked myself several times over the years, how could I recreate this effect in After Effects? My first instinct was always to create these super big, wide comps of colored shapes and then make them 3D layers and have them moving toward the camera in a composition, and it kind of works. It's not great. Then, after I made a video about the time displacement effect in After Effects, somebody emailed me this amazing work from this artist in France who was creating slit-scan video art on Instagram. That's when I realized that the slit-scan, the fundamental technique of what made the Stargate sequence, was missing from my approach in After Effects. So I resolved to make another attempt at creating the Stargate look in After Effects, and this is what I came up with. And the motion is pretty good. The overall look is pretty close. I think I'm on the right track here. And I'd like to dig into the slit scan technique itself. So I've created a comp here that's roughly the aspect ratio that I want. And I made it small just so my computer doesn't blow up while I'm recording this. 640 by 280. So if my ultimate output is 280 pixels tall, that's what I need to get started. I'm going to create the narrowest comp possible in After Effects, which is 4 pixels for some reason. I'm going to name this my slit comp. I could raise the frame rate because I'm going to be dealing with time displacement later, but because I'm doing all the movement within After Effects, I don't actually have to worry about frame rate. If I was shooting something, if I was shooting a video, I would want to shoot at the highest frame rate to play behind the slit. So I have my slit and I want images behind it, either a video that is playing with something moving across the frame. I'm going to create a comp that I will call the gel. It's a reference to the colored gels that were moving behind the sheet of glass in 2001. I'm going to make this comp very wide, and I'm going to put a large amount of imagery across it. So let's go ahead and make this, I don't know, about 3,000 pixels wide. Why not? I'm just going to import this image is from one of the first rolls of film that I ever exposed. And because it's one of the first, I must have made some mistake because there was a light leak and everything turned red. But I'm going to use that color to my advantage. And let's maybe overlay. Ooh, this looks nice. This is an image with some nice purple in it. Let's experiment with blending modes. I'm just using Shift+ to cycle through these modes and preview them. Hard light. Let's just go with hard light. So now I'm going to take the gel and drop it into the slit comp, and I'm going to go ahead and put the anchor point over at 0 and open my position property, and it starts with black, which is actually kind of nice. I'm going to just start here, set a keyframe, go to the end, and let's move this all the way to the end. So within our slit, I need to go to full resolution to show you this. We still have some amount of definition in the horizontal because After Effects doesn't let us do otherwise. So I'm going to create an adjustment layer. I'm applying the transform effect to our adjustment layer. I'm going to turn off uniform scale, and I'm going to scale the width until these start to look like just horizontal bands. All right, we are ready to move on to our next comp, which is going to be half the width of the output. It's going to be 1/2 of the frame. Our output is 640 by 280. Again, that is really weird. Let's create this as 320 by 280. Oh, and I forgot to name the comp. This will be our scan. So we have a slit, we have a scan, we have a gel, and we have an output. Those are the 4 main ingredients here. So in the scan, I'm going to put the slit. Now we are going to fix the 4 pixel wide limitation that After Effects has blessed us with. So in the scale, we are going to make a non-uniform, and we're just going to scale down the x-axis by 1/4. I'm going to place it on the far left side of the frame at pixel position 0.5, because the center is right in the middle of it. It's 1 pixel wide, so there we go. 0.5 pixels puts it on the edge. We want our vertical slit to be repeated across the frame, so we are going to find our friend CC RepeTile, not RepeTile. Drop that on there, and we will expand. You can expand right, left, up, down. In this case, expand to the right and click and drag. Or to be super precise, we know that the comp is 320 pixels wide. So we're going to type in 320, and it only goes 1/4 of the way because our scale is set to 25. So we need to multiply that by 4, which you can just type that in right in the value here. And it goes to 1280. And look at that. We've got this lovely streaky mess. As the gel passes behind the slit, that 1 pixel is changing, so our scan will show up as such. But 2001 is not a bunch of these streaks. It is actually complete artwork. A scanner scans the whole image, not just one piece over and over. It changes over time, so time displacement will give us the result we want. So let's add an adjustment layer here, and we will call it time displace. And we will add the time displacement effect to it. Make sure you're in 16-bit color, my friends, because we want all of that tonal resolution that we can get. I'm also going to create a solid called gradient. I will drop a gradient ramp on there. And we want the start of the ramp to be on the left side. So I'm going to go 0, 0. End of the ramp will be at 320. I'm just lining it up with the corners. Turn that visibility off. Now the time displace, we will refer to the gradient using the effects and masks. And looky there, we've got a scanned image. It's kind of pixelated. We've got some bands because our time resolution is not super high. It's set to 60 right now. You don't need to crank it too high. If you do, it will kill your computer. You can find a happy middle ground by setting your time resolution fairly high and then just adding another adjustment layer and just adding some directional blur, and that will smooth out enough to be acceptable. So you've got something. And with our time displacement, the max displacement value, we can stretch or squash our image. In this case where I'm using photographs for my color information, I think stretching it probably looks a little more abstract, and we won't be distracted by seeing recognizable images on the screen. So I'm going to set that to 0.2. Okay, now we go to our output comp. We are going to place the scan inside of the output comp. I'm going to place my anchor point on the edge, and that just moves it over to the side. Great, but this doesn't really look like the Stargate. It just looks like an image moving to the side, which is okay, but it's not what we're looking for. So I'm going to corner pin. So the upper left corner, that's the this is 0.0. This is where everything is measured from. So in the vertical dimension, we are going to start subtracting to move that point up. And let's go, just kind of spitballing here, let's go -500. Yeah, that's starting to look right. And so the lower left, we go +500. Except we don't, because the lower left corner starts at 280. We need to add 280 to the 500. So again, we just can do that right in the dialog here. Just do the arithmetic, and it gives us 780. Now those are spaced evenly, and you can zoom out and see that the corners are appropriately spaced. Yeah, I might even go a little higher. Let's go to 720. Whoa! 7,200. 720. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, so we have half a frame. How do we get the other half? Do all that work over again. Just kidding. Okay, so I've done a little housekeeping here to organize my comps, and I'm going to duplicate those, move them into our B folder, and I'm going to rename them accordingly. But just because we duplicated them and renamed them doesn't mean that they contain the right information. We want scan B to contain slit B, so Option click and drag, and we want slit B to contain the correct gel. And in the output comp, I'm just going to duplicate scan A so we can keep that work that we already did on the corner pinning. I'm going to replace that with scan B, and in the scale, I'm just going to turn the X value to negative, so it's negative 100, and that will just flop that across the screen. Okay, so now in the gel B layer, I'm just going to swap out the photo. So I've got a different image on the B side. Now if we go to the output, it's a very different image. Doesn't look great. There are a few cosmetic things that we can do here. I'm going to create an adjustment layer for glow, because the original 2001 glows like crazy. I'm going to pull that radius up, but the intensity down a bit. Call that good for now. I'm going to name that layer. Name your layers. I'm going to intensify things with the levels a little bit. Get some pretty crazy intense hues going on. And if we play, that is starting to look a little 2001-y. And you know, I'm making this on the fly. These images aren't looking that stunning, but this is the same basic recipe that I used to create this, which definitely looks better. Maybe I can make this nicer file available on Patreon or something. Let me know if you'd like to see that. There are a few more touches that we can add that'll help us sell the effect. One more adjustment layer that I'll add in my output comp here is optics compensation. It's a nice lens distortion effect. So we'll crank this up, but it's going the wrong direction, so we will reverse it. And that sort of emphasizes the corner distortion, the edge distortion, which I always enjoy. Another thing that I noticed when analyzing the original of 2001 was that there was a definite fall off in the exposure on the edges of the frame, and it kind of dances around and it looks pretty amazing. And I didn't quite understand how I was going to tackle that, but with some experimentation, I've added some adjustment layers within my scan comps. This one is darkening exposure. I've just got a feathered mask around this adjustment layer, and I've added the exposure effect, and I've pulled that down significantly. Let's really pull it down. I've done the same thing on both sides. I just copied and pasted the layers. And I've also added an adjustment layer to brighten exposure on the opposite side of the frame, which ends up being the center. So now there's a lot more variation in the exposure, and it looks a little bit closer to the original. So I'm going to play with the placement of this exposure effect and the amount of feathering and exactly how I want it to look, and then compare to the output. And I can even lock this composition viewer and have a new one so I can work side by side. This way I can see exactly how my work in the subcomp is affecting the output comp. So if I change the exposure, that's going to update in this comp. You can spend a lot of time refining those exposure details. Now let's play a little bit more with that glow. Whoosh. So this is a little bit more rough than the example that I showed at the beginning, which is okay. This is mostly a demo, and you can really go through and dive into each one of these adjustment layers and add some of your own and refine the technique. Maybe you're screaming at me because I'm doing something really stupid that to you is very obvious, like this is more efficient, you should do this instead. I don't know. But this is giving me Eye of Sauron vibes now. So this one is moving pretty fast, and I don't know, I think it looks pretty cool. Because I already have my slit and scan comps set up, and we've already reviewed how to work with them, I want to show you how you can use video layers instead of just like the moving artwork behind the slit, kind of demonstrate how that works. So I'm going to delete this gel from this particular slit comp. I'm going to drop in some footage. When I was playing with time displacement, for a previous video, I shot some footage of me jumping around the backyard. And so we are going to take this image and take a slit right down the center of it. And we'll see what kind of image we come up with here. So we have over time, this is blank, and then I come flying through there, right around here. Because the movement isn't generated within After Effects, this is video, I do want to make sure that I match the frame rate of the video, which was 60 or 59.94 if you want to get super NTSC technical about it. It doesn't change because it's on a tripod, but then as soon as something moves through it, you can see here comes my leg and all that stuff. Okay, now for the scan silly comp. I'm going to replace slit B with my other slit. I'm going to adjust my time displacement 2 to be a little bit different. Okay, we've got an image that's appearing. I've adjusted my max displacement value here so I could kind of get a broader picture. And we move, and now I'm back here, and if I scroll forward in time, there I go flying through. So you get a nice still frame, and I can stretch this so I become wider or narrower. And the resolution is limited by the frame rate of the camera, so it's not going to get a whole lot better than this. If I was shooting at, 240 frames per second or something, this wouldn't be quite as jaggy. So now we have one dimension. This vertical dimension is defined by space, and the horizontal dimension is time. If you're looking at these streaks of color, you may be reminded of the tesseract at the end of the film Interstellar, where Matthew McConaughey states, very matter-of-factly, that these beings are using three-dimensional representations of time to help communicate with humans that can only perceive so many dimensions. Anyway, it's not by accident that this sort of stuff gets used in these sci-fi films. So I will leave you to ponder the meaning of time and space by gazing at this image of myself through time. Like and subscribe and comment and all that crap. And subscribe to me on Patreon, because that's a thing that I guess I'm starting now. I guess if there's a link, you can click it. If not, that means I got lazy and I didn't actually do it.